yeah, 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 look, ball player, no watching from the side. Said that you got him next, well go ahead and show him why. No limits in the sky, go ahead and take your shot. This one is for the city, let's show him how we rock. Coaches used to call my phone, what you doing, just got home.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Up Next, the podcast where we tell you who's up next in youth sports. Today, we got a special guest. We're just gonna talk about good old NBA, Knicks, Nets, professional basketball kind of stuff. I'm Jamal Murphy. Of course, I got my co-host extraordinaire, Khalid Green, in the house. What's up?
Peace, man. I got my guy on today, man. I go back from the high school days when he used to cover Lachlan, and so I'm happy to have him here, Ian Begley, in the house, man.
And it's so good to be with you guys, man.
Yes, sir.
Good to be with you guys. Thank you for having me. And Khalid, I'll always remember being in either the Lachlan gym or maybe it was a Christ the King where I first saw you. I think you guys had beaten Christ the King, maybe.
Yeah.
Then there was like a summer thing where I think Javon Pinkston, I don't know how old he was. He was young.
Right.
And he was just killing everybody in Brooklyn. I forget what gym we were in, but I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
It'll be good. And you were there.
Absolutely.
Let me find out Khalid was upsetting Christ the King.
Wasn't an upset then, man.
Nah, Lachlan was stacked.
No, I hear you. Well, Ian, let's get right into it. You know, like I said, we usually do youth sports, and we get these young kids and find out, you know, what got them started. So along those same lines, how did you get started in the business? Were you always like a sports fanatic like we were?
Yeah, I loved sports growing up. I liked writing, and I can't jump over a credit card, so I knew I wasn't going to be a pro athlete, and so it was just a way to kind of marry both passions. And in college, I started studying journalism, and I worked for the paper in town down there. I went to the University of Richmond, so the Richmond Times-Dispatch down there is where I worked, and I really got into it, really enjoyed it, had a passion for it. And, was just fortunate enough to then land a job at the Daily News, and then went over to ESPN and just really lucky along the way, because this industry, as you guys know, it's a competitive industry. It's a tough industry. And so just feel fortunate to have taken the path that I took, but it really started with, passion for sports, passion for writing. I like talking to people too. So just all those things kind of blending together.
No, good stuff. So yeah, let's get into some Knicks, Nets, or NBA in general. But I wanted to start with the draft. And I thought, you know how the Knicks are, and you know how the fans are, and they've had a few swingings and misses over the years in the draft. I thought this draft actually looked, pretty good for them. I was a big fan of Obi Toppin. I cover the college game. And he was the best player in the nation last year, pretty by far, I thought. So what did you think about that pick? And what do you think the Knicks think about that pick? Do they think they got a steal?
Well, he was their target pretty much. I don't want to say all along, because I know there was diverse opinions among the front office, but he was a target for them for sure. And the thinking was from other teams too that he was going to go top 5, so he wasn't going to be there for the Knicks. And so I think they got fortunate in that respect, because they were thinking about having to trade up to Cleveland on draft night to get up and take Obi, but ended up falling to them when the Cavs took Isaac Okoro. So that seemed to be a fortunate break of events for the Knicks, because they didn't have to give up anything to get their guy. Certainly incredibly talented player, local guy. So Knicks fans like that. Obviously work to do on the defensive end. I think that's where, he'll reach his ceiling, or he won't reach his, if he becomes a capable defender and continues to progress on the offensive end the way, we've seen him in the college game do. He's going to be a very good player. But like all young players, he's got to work on his defense. And if you're going to be a young player and you're going to need to work on your defense, you're in a pretty good hands with Tom Thibodeau. So it's going to be to see how the coaching staff can help bring him along, not only this year, but in the years ahead.
Mm-hmm.
They got a point guard at the end of the draft, right?
Yes.
From Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
What do they feel about him? What's their projection for him? Is he going to be a backup, or do they think he can eventually start maybe this year or in the coming years?
My guess is that Tom Thibodeau is not going to start quickly this year, but I think that, you know, the point guard situation, the backcourt situation, the whole roster, it's totally fluid because they don't have a lot of players that are here beyond this year. And so you could easily see, you know, if quickly shows that he can handle things night in and night out in the NBA, that he could be elevated to a starting spot, you know, eventually with this Knicks team. I don't think it's going to happen. I'd be surprised if it happened this year because they have guys like Austin Rivers, Elfrid Payton, you know, Alec Burks, different veterans who could fill in the 1 and the 2 in the backcourt. But obviously the hope for the Knicks is eventually quickly becomes that starting player who could play the 1 or the 2. And they like his shooting, and they think that he could be a good player on defense. So some people thought it was a reach, take him at 25, but I mean, the draft is so all over the place.
Right.
How can you even really know until you get on the court in the league?
Absolutely.
So it was the shooting that they really liked, because it was a surprise to me. You know, he never really jumped off the page to me, you know, when I watched Kentucky games. So that's what it was, the shooting.
I think it was the shooting and the athleticism and how that might translate to the defensive end. And the interesting thing there is obviously with Kentucky, a Kentucky player, Kenny Payne, assistant coach on the Knicks, was at Kentucky. So he's going to have a strong working knowledge of the players in that program. And obviously Leon Rose, William Wesley have strong ties to John Calipari. So I'm sure there was a familiarity there.
Right.
And, you know, we'll see if they got it right, because I think you leave yourself open to criticism if you're the Knicks, if you're acquiring CAA players and Kentucky players, and CAA is Leon Rose's former agency, and the plan doesn't work out, right? So if it works out and Toppin's great and Quickly's great, nobody's going to care, you know, where they went to school or who their agents are. Toppin's a CAA player. But if it doesn't work out, then you're kind of going to get second guessed. So it's just going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Speaking of Kentucky, where are their thoughts right now regarding Kevin Knox? Because he's kind of been disappointing, you know, in the Knicks jersey so far. Do they have high hopes on him? Do they think Kenny Payne can help develop him a little more? Or, you know, where are they at with him?
Well, I think if you talk to people around Knox, they say he had a good offseason. They say that, you know, based on what he did in the bubble, the practices that the Knicks had in the bubble, that he looked good and that the Knicks feel good about him and the work that he did in the offseason. But generally, the regime, you know, hasn't been so enthused about what they've seen from Kevin from not a worker standpoint, but just, I guess, a motor day in and day out. But, you know, the people around Kevin say, hey, he's locked in possession by possession now. He's going at 100% every possession. So if he's got to show it, though, this year, because this is a new regime. You know, Leon Rose didn't draft him. And when you didn't draft the players on your roster, you have no allegiance to them. You don't need to make them look good to make yourself look good. And so I think this is a make or break year for Knox, for Dennis Smith Jr., and Frank Ntilikina.
Mm.
You mentioned the new brass with the Knicks. You know, how is that looking? You know, who's making the decisions? I know Scott Perry is still there, right?
Scott's still here, general manager under Leon Rose, and he's here for 1 year. He's on a 1-year deal, so I think, you know, if it goes well, you could see him sticking around beyond this year. And a lot of the people underneath Steve Mills and Scott Perry, previous regime, are still here, a lot of the scouts. So I think because of the pandemic, like it became a difficult situation to have all this turnover and clean house if you're Leon Rose, and bring in a whole new staff, because you take over in March and you're trying to scout for the draft. You don't know when the draft is. So because of the intel that the people in place already had, you know, they stayed on through the draft. They're going to some of them are going to stay on through this season. And then I think the assessment will take place, now and during the season. And then we'll see where they are after this year. But Leon did bring in some other front office people. I mentioned William Wesley, Brock Aller, this cap guy from the Cavs who is going to do a lot for the Knicks. Leon Rose is going to lean on him. So he made some additions and some subtractions, but he didn't totally turn the whole thing over.
So in terms of expectations this year for the Knicks, I know that it's tricky, but do they have any? I mean, is this, we got Thibodeau, he's one of the most competitive coaches out there for sure. Do they have any real expectations? Like, are you thinking like trying to get the 8th seed, or are we total rebuild mode?
They're going to try to win, like day in, day out. I think Thibodeau's mindset is going to be, let's win games. And I think that that's going to help them, no matter what the record is. It's going to help them, because if your mentality is, losing mentality, we're going to tank this year, that affects your players, and that could hurt long-term, like young players that you're trying to develop. So I don't think the record's going to be good. I'd be surprised if they were, anywhere near the 8th seed. But I think they're going to, if they're a Tom Thibodeau coach team, they're going to play hard night in and night out, and he's going to try to put them in position to win every night. So I think in the best case scenario for the Knicks, that builds winning habits, that builds that winning culture that every team tries to put in place. And then maybe a couple of young guys take a leap forward, and then maybe you look differently to some free agents out there once you get back into the next offseason.
What about the let's segue to the Brooklyn Nets.
Let's go across the river, baby.
Yeah,
yes,
across the river where I'm at now, where we're both at in Brooklyn. Obviously, higher expectations over here,
yeah, for sure.
But it's still unknown. What do you like? What are the big concerns if you're the Nets right now?
Man, I would say that I'm going to start interviewing your co-host on that one. But I think, anybody could see like the concern with Steve Nash and then the 2 superstars, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. Anytime you're a head coach, even with a great amount of experience, it's a challenge to come in and keep a roster, like keep everybody on the same page, keep every player happy when you are also having 2 superstars at the top. I think it becomes more of a challenge when you don't have that head coaching experience, and that's what Steve Nash is coming in with, no head coaching experience. I know they put together an experienced bench underneath him, right. So I think that's going to help him. But, the expectations are sky high. So you're coming in with a head coach without experience. You have Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, who've never played together, 2 incredible talents, and then you have a roster underneath them where guys are going to have to change their roles and accept different roles, because Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are going to be leading this thing. So there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of things that have to fit well together. So it's a tough situation, but whenever you have 2 of the top players in the NBA and you're starting 5 night in and night out, you're going to win a lot of games. I think it's just a matter of how they coalesce over the course of the season, where they are health-wise going into the playoffs. But certainly talent's there. They should be, the top, one of the top, if not the top team in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I was talking to Jamal before you came on, Ian, and I said, to me, my biggest concern, if I'm them, is what you just mentioned, is health. Because Kyrie usually doesn't make it through a whole season. Yeah. And KD, as you know, is coming off the catastrophic injury. So, and I've been in that around Sean Marks. He's very detail oriented when it comes to, keeping guys healthy, and he's very conservative with that. So I know that has to be one of the main things and on their mind as far as, the success, what it means to the success of the season.
Yeah, you have to almost plan for those guys to miss games. And especially, with COVID and everything else, it could get tricky for every team, but particularly like the Nets, which might, top players might be dealing with bumps and bruises regardless. So the interesting thing there is like Spencer Dinwiddie, there was a lot of talk about, are they going to trade him in this offseason, because it doesn't appear like there's an obvious big role for him on this team. with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on board. But you look at the flip side, and if you think your top guys are going to be missing games, you're going to need somebody like Spencer Dinwiddie to come in and play big minutes on those nights and help you win some of those games when Durant or Irving or somebody else is out.
So you don't see the Harden trade going down?
I don't. I think it depends on how the season starts, right? Because let's say the Nets start out, I don't know, like 8-2 or 12-2, whatever. They're really strong starting out. I think you ride that out. I mean, obviously, if they stumble, it's going to be a different story, and it's going to be a lot of noise around the Nets because of the Harden thing. But I think it depends on how they start the season out, because Houston seems pretty committed to starting out with Harden and Wall and trying to convince Harden, change his mind, get him to stay. So I think they're not in a rush to make a deal. So a lot of it will be determined by, the first couple weeks of the season, seeing where things go. I also think, Philly too, I think if they stumble out of the gate, I could see Daryl Morey making a strong play for Harden. Obviously that means trading Ben Simmons and shaking things up in a major way. But, that's why I would keep an eye on the first few weeks of the season, see how these teams do. And I think that'll affect the climate for potential big trades around James Harden.
Speaking of that John Wall, Russell Westbrook trade, who you think got the better of that deal?
The only reason I'm going to say Washington is because John Wall hasn't played in so long. And so, what's he going to be? I know the players who played with him over the offseason say he looks great. And I hope he comes back and looks great. And that's fantastic. But I think also if you look at Westbrook and Beal, I'm not a scout, right? I'm not an expert, but it seems to me like that's a better natural fit as a pairing than Wall and Harden, because, both of those guys need the ball a lot. And, obviously Westbrook has the ball in his hands. But if Beal could be like a floor spacer, Westbrook's going to get him and the Bertans and their other shooters a lot of great open looks. So it seems like a better natural pairing, Beal and Westbrook, than Wall and Harden.
I agree.
Do you think they can make any noise in the East?
Yeah.
You do?
Definitely. If everybody's healthy, I mean, the way that lineup is set up, you're putting shooters around Westbrook, and we've seen how that works before. Like, those teams are really successful. So, and it puts him in his best position too. So I could see them winning a bunch of games if everybody's healthy. See them definitely getting into the playoff picture.
So before we let you go, I mean, the elephant in the room, and you mentioned it earlier, is COVID-19. And we've seen what's going on with the other leagues, the NFL. It's kind of ravaging the NFL. They're plowing on, no problem. But college basketball, they continue to to press forward. So that seems like what all these leagues are doing. We've made a decision. We know it's bad, but we're just going to try to get through it. And whatever happens, happens. The NBA, who was the model of this stuff before with the bubble and doing everything carefully, now is basically doing what the rest of these leagues are doing, where you're having home and away games. What's your take on that? And how? I mean, it's unpredictable, but how do you see it playing out?
I think it's inevitable that games are going to be postponed, and you're going to have players out for this. I mean, it's just that this is just the situation everybody's in. So the only way to protect everybody from it would be to do a bubble, but there was no appetite from the players, which I totally understand, to do a bubble during the season. But, I guess their hope is, and I don't really have optimism about this, I guess their hope is over the course of the season, things improve with the virus and vaccine comes, whatever. And then when you get towards the, playoffs, finals, you can get into a situation where things are more normal and, you have fans. But I think it's going to be tough sledding, man, just to get through these games over the winter. You see the numbers all across the country. There's no avoiding it, especially if you're traveling, you're spending time together indoors in group settings. I mean, it's you check off all the boxes of what the experts say to avoid. This is what NBA teams are going to be forced to do to get through this season. So there's no way that you're going to totally avoid, players unfortunately getting ill or cancellation of games.
And what about from your perspective in the media? Can media be at games? Will you go to games? How's that working?
Right. So media can be at games. I haven't fully decided yet. I think maybe for the early.
And is it you haven't decided or your wife?
Oh, yeah, it's not a democracy over here. It's not a democracy. It's one vote. The only vote that counts is not mine.
Absolutely.
You're right. My wife hasn't decided yet.
Okay.
I hear that.
But I'll probably play it safe early on, see how it goes. If there's an advantage to being in the building, I'll go probably later on in the season. But early on, I'm just going to see how it goes and play it safer because, we're all trying to stay safe here.
Absolutely.
Well, all right, Ian, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. I know you got to hop back on some business, but we really appreciate it. Ian Begley, NBA reporter, SNY, formerly at ESPN and the Daily News. Always appreciate talking to you, and hopefully we get you back on soon.
I appreciate you guys, man. Thank you for having me. Would love to come back soon.
All right,
Thanks,
thank
Ian.
you.
Anytime, fellas. Take care.
You too.
Peace.
Thank you, boys.
Thank you.
I'll
Peace.
see you guys.
See you
All
soon.
right.
Let's do it again soon.
Yes, sir.
All right. Enjoy your weekends.
You too.
All right. So we got our little NBA Knicks Nets fix from the insider Ian Begley, NBA reporter for SNY. And interesting stuff, man. This stuff is wide open. NBA is always fun. You never know what's going to happen. But now, COVID-19. This is crazy. We don't know what it's going to look like.
Yeah, this is surreal times. But great having my guy Ian Bagley on to talk NBA talk. The Knicks are the Knicks, but the Nets are, exciting. And the NBA is always a soap opera. So,
Right.
like he said, the first 10 days or first 2 weeks of the NBA season, we might see some blockbuster trades. We might have the bid in Brooklyn or in Philly. Who knows?
That would be crazy. Yep.
Yep.
And, the NBA starts soon, okay?
Yes. Yes.
I think preseason games start December 11th.
I'm excited, man. I got my popcorn ready, and I told my lady you could watch Lifetime in the other room all you want, but I'm watching this basketball over here.
No, it's on. No fans in the stands, but there'll be fans on the couch.
Yep.
Sure.
So I'm excited. My early season prediction, I have the Lakers winning it again.
Really?
Yeah.
So you think it's like easy, or it's going to be?
I
real
don't think it's going to be easy, but you have a happy LeBron James, you have a happy Anthony Davis.
True.
And with the addition of Harrell and the point guard, I forgot Schroeder. I think they've been upgraded. So I have the Lakers and going against the Brooklyn Nets.
Oh wow! So you got the Nets putting it all together and getting there.
Yeah, as long as everybody stays healthy. That's the one caveat.
See, I think the East is tough. You know what I'm saying? I think it's tougher. I don't think Miami was a fluke. I think they're for real. They're gonna be there. They're gonna bring it every night. I think Boston. I think Tatum and Brown are only gonna get better. So so if those dudes take a jump, and they were already all-stars last season.
Right.
Tatum was a real all-star. Brown was all-star level.
Yeah, he's right there.
Yeah, so I think those guys will get better. So I think Boston's even better, but you got Kemba who seems to have a serious knee injury.
Yeah.
So we'll see there. In the West, yes, I agree with you. I think the Lakers got better. But I think, Denver will get better because their young guys will get better. The Clippers, I think, made some nice signings. Lou might be a better fit as a coach. We'll see. I had picked the Clippers. I thought the Clippers would win it all last season. So
yeah, they let me down last year. So
huge disappointment. So I'm
jumping off that bandwagon. Now watch them win it this year.
Exactly. Well, if they do, then you better start giving Tyronn Lue his credit.
No question.
If they win it this year after that disappointment last year, you got to give it to him.
Absolutely.
For putting it together. So we'll see. It'll be a fun season regardless. So even the Knicks will be fun to watch, regardless of their record, because we can see if Obi Toppin develops and some of their other young guys. So
yeah, this is also going to be a big year for R.J. Barrett. He's going to have to, step into a bigger role with the Knicks, and hopefully his shooting got better.
Right. I mean, and that's what he says he was built for. So I mean, it should
Yeah.
this should be what he wants. Remember, we talked to Elijah Fisher on the
Right.
podcast.
Shout out to Canada.
He's supposed to be Canada's greatest ever.
Absolutely.
He's gonna have to do something to overtake R.J. Barrett, because he was for real. Did his thing at Duke for that 1 year.
Yep.
Number 2 overall pick, right? Or number 3 overall
Three,
pick.
and he should have a grudge or have an edge now, because I think he was kept off those rookie postseason awards. So he should be coming back with a different type of hunger.
Yeah, and you're right. The key will be if he can hit that shot consistently, because the rest of his game is legit.
Good motor.
Yeah, he can
competitive.
Do a lot. Competitive. Can get to the hole, can pass, can rebound. For his size. So we'll see. It's all about can you put it in the basket.
Absolutely.
So thank you again for listening to another episode of Up Next. Really appreciate the support we've been getting. Keep listening to the podcast. Keep following us. Keep subscribing on wherever you listen to your podcast, whatever medium, whether Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, all that good stuff. Follow us on Instagram at UpNextPod, and follow us on Twitter at UpNext_pod. And we'll keep giving you that information you're looking for and some great content.
Peace.